As an Australian, I believe in giving every Aussie movie a fair go. That's our big phrase in Australia. You know, you got to give everything a fair go. Yesterday, I had a preview of this movie, and lo and behold, today it popped up to watch. So I thought, well, being an Australian movie, being a horror movie, I'll check it out. This is Carnage for Christmas. I am the Artie Dans, and you are watching SHOCKMANIA. Welcome to this review. What's it about? Well, it's about a woman called Lola who runs a horror true crime podcast who decides to go back, or not decides to, has to go back to her hometown for Christmas, where there have been historical reports of a serial killer called the Toymaker, someone who dresses up as Santa and kills people in the town. Now, while Lola is back in town, some of her friends end up dead at the hands of what appears to be the Toymaker. And Lola then takes it upon herself to investigate what's going on and solve the case. Now, I've got to be really careful what I say about this film, because there's going to be an element out there that is going to accuse me of punching down. And I don't quite understand what that phrase means. To fully enjoy this movie, there are a couple of things you need to go into it with. One, it is a complete and utter micro-budget movie, and that's not a problem in itself. I love micro-budget movies. In fact, I'm making a micro-budget movie, so I know the issues and concerns and problems with doing micro-budgets. This movie wears that micro-budget on its sleeve. But there's another element to this film that is the hook, and that's the queerness of it. And your element of enjoyment of this film might be how much you can tolerate constantly being reminded every couple of minutes that you're watching a queer production. And that's ultimately part of one of the biggest issues with this film. Now, a big shout out has to go to the filmmaker, a 19-year-old who has directed a handful of movies beforehand, including a lot of short movies, all in the same sub-genre of horror in queer horror. And it looks like so far she's doing a fabulous job. And there is a lot of potential with the work that is done by this particular filmmaker. However, she's certainly wearing her teenage elements on her sleeve. This movie comes across very much as teen fan fiction. There is a massive element that the main character is correct. The main character can't do anything wrong, and that the police are idiots. And I understand that, you know, kind of makes for good movies when you use that trope, but it's pretty much overdone in this film. There is, and again, so what I'm trying to say is your tolerance of the film will be on how much you can suspend that disbelief that there are murders happening in this town and that the police are not only turning a blind eye to it, but they are actively sabotaging the investigation of these murders. And the example I can give you is when they go to the murder scene and all of a sudden Lola starts going, they haven't done this, they haven't done this, they haven't done this, look at all this mess. As if she's the expert and knows exactly what to do after she's read a couple of Nancy Drew books. And Nancy Drew is the reference that's used later on in the film. Nancy Crew, I think they call it. The other thing that is a bit off-putting with the film is constantly being reminded of its queerness. And what I mean is, I don't care if you use trans characters, gay characters. That's fine, right? That's your story. You go ahead and you do them. But there's no need to constantly remind us of the whole thing. And what I'm saying by that is that there is a scene in the film about half an hour in when there's a news broadcast about the first two murders that occur in the movie. And the caption on the screen reads, "Local lesbian killed in botch robbery." Now, that might be cool and edgy for teenagers when you're writing this movie script going, oh, look at this, I'm going to write this in there. But in reality, TV doesn't do that. And we know TV doesn't do that. And you can sit there and try and make some strawman examples of movies that do, or of real life situations that do it. But in reality, that doesn't happen. And in Australian television, that would definitely not be allowed. That would certainly be cause for a discrimination complaint against the ACMA. So just little things like that. You don't need to keep reminding the audience. If at the 15-20 minute mark, the audience is still watching the film, assume that they don't care about that element. Just carry on with the characters and what's going on. Now, I did recognize... what I was going to say was that the movie is made up of relative newcomers or people that have worked with the director before. I did recognize one of the characters in the film, or one of the actresses in the film, who's been in a TV commercial for the Tangerine internet brand. So it was interesting to see this girl that was in that TV commercial now in this movie, and she's actually speaking and you can hear her talk. However, with the film, there are other massive technical issues that probably get in the way. And again, this is what I mean. This assumption that I'm punching down on this film because of who's made it and the theme behind it is completely incorrect. And when discussing art, you've got to take that element aside and go, no, he's critiquing the film for a reason. And when my film comes out later next year, by all means, go ahead and do the same thing too. I know what's wrong with it. I know the issues with it. I know what can be said about it. And it won't surprise me one bit what those things are said about the film. But in this film, a lot of technical problems can be solved by just having some more senior people on set with the director. The lighting is all out. Some scenes are far too dark to see what's going on there, and that can be solved with just someone who's a bit more aware of how lighting works. Some of your visual effects look great, but an overemphasis on strobing is not a good look for your audience. Definitely avoid strobing. But there are some really nice cartoon comic style elements that are thrown into the movie that kind of break it up a bit and add some really nice charm to the film. So overall, this is not a terribly bad film. It's just missing elements that need to make it something that you're going to sit down and watch. Now, I understand if you're going for a specific audience and that specific audience laps it up, then great. Ignore every bit that I've said about this film. But if you're a horror fan like I am, who just wants to watch movies, and specifically Australian movies, you want to pick it up and enjoy it, there are elements in here that are going to be not so enjoyable to watch. So using the patent pending ghost rating, which stands for great horror or stupid trash, I will give this 2 ghosts because of you've got a very young filmmaker who is going to make a lot of movies out there, and she's going to make a lot of great movies when she gets a budget and when she gets the right people behind her who can steer the stories in the right direction, who can steer the themes in the right direction, and can just help her with all of these technical problems. There's also a really creative killer there. I do like the whole Santa Claus idea. I like the idea of the toy maker. I think there's franchise potential in this film. It certainly ends with some franchise potential, and I think that could be explored and turn this into one of those Aussie horror franchises that people are going to talk about all throughout the world. That it's such a great film. So I think there is the building blocks of some potentially awesome idea here, but just as it is at the moment, go in with a bit of caution. I am the Artie Dans. You are watching SHOCKMANIA. Thank you for tuning in to this Australian movie review of Carnage for Christmas. I hope to catch you next time.